Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is George Brown. I am an assistant vice provost in the Office for Student Affairs. And more directly, I am the director of University Recreation and Wellness. And welcome to our little home away from home here. Wow, I know it's been an incredible family weekend, and we're super happy to be a part of it, but particularly on the recreation and sports side of it, that was pretty cool last night, right? Yeah, go Gophers. That was awesome. I am a PhD graduate from the University of Alabama, and so I didn't have the best afternoon, but I had a better evening. Vanderbilt, really? Okay. Anyway. I want to let you guys know before I turn over to Gavin to welcome our panelists that, and for the students that are here with their families right now, this is the part of the program where you nod and say, yes, George, that's correct. Your sons and daughters are in here a lot. Okay, they really are. And I'm not saying that to make that up. We realize and see over 1.2 million visits between all of our recreation facilities, both here on East Bank in Minneapolis and over at St. Paul as well. We are super glad to be a part of student affairs, but more importantly, a part of the student experience. Whether it be intramurals or club sports or fitness offerings or swimming in the pool or climbing the wall, running on the track, playing at any of our outdoor facilities, on our new fitness court over at the Super Block. This has been an incredible start to the year. We historically get 27, 28,000 in this building visits a week. For the last three, and we'll find out more data tomorrow, we've been getting over 30 to 31,000 visits a week. You're here and you're clearly active. And from a health standpoint, we couldn't be more happy about that. So just super glad you guys are here today. I know there's some other cool events going on. Some of you may have taken advantage of some fitness classes, pickleball, which is still all the rage, by the way. It absolutely is. We'll be doing a lot of stuff next door, but we're glad to be a part of this. Just a couple of housekeeping things before I give it to Gavin. Restrooms are out and to your right. Around you, kind of the building kind of arcs around, but you'll see it's plainly marked. Locker rooms, if you are planning to do anything today, which we absolutely welcome and encourage, the locker rooms are on the lower level. There are locker rooms both in the south and in the north building. If you need any help navigating our big building, then please let me know. But otherwise than that, I will turn it over to Gavin, and thank you all again, and go Gophers.
And thank you all again for being here. I know you've heard and seen a lot of me, and so I'm going to keep that brief because you deserve to see more of our campus. And so, but thank you all for being a part of Family Weekend, for being here. Today's Sunday send-off really it's a focus on well-being and wellness. And so, learning about shelter, right? That's important. Where you're going to be and all of the things. We know that there's a lot of discussions out there, and I've heard from families reaching out that there's a lot of discussions on, the various groups out there and on social media and things. And so this is hopefully going to provide a great bit of information. And then the rest of the day, we also have available in the rooms across the way, we'll have starting at 11-ish yard games, as well as PAWS, or Pet Away Worry and Stress therapy animals there for you to be able to engage with. Again, really just thinking about this building and our campus as it's important to invest in ourselves, make sure that we're okay. So it's been a busy weekend. Students are using the facility. Thank you, George, for that update too. And we want you all to also invest and fill your buckets because you've been drawing from them throughout the weekend. So that's really the goal of today. And I want to give a really huge shout out to George and the Recwell team. Thank you so much for the partnership throughout the weekend entirely too, being here today in their beautiful facility, but also having so many opportunities yesterday with spin classes and yoga and pickleball. That was my own bias creeping in and introducing pickleball, as I'm pickleball obsessed now myself. It is. Well, I'm all right. I'm all right. Yeah. My gimmick is I wear a sweatband when I play, just to look silly and have fun. But thank you all again for being here. This session, though, without further ado, again, is focused on housing. So we have representatives and actually leaders from all of these three areas. So first off, Mannix, again, leadership in housing and residential life, living on campus. And then we have Mark, who is again leadership in student legal service, talking about all of the legal considerations for leases. And I don't want to summarize; they're going to do a better job in doing that. And then Kendra, again, leadership in off-campus living. So you're not living on campus, living off campus, all of the options there. And so really, this is a really robust session. I am incredibly thankful of these three choosing to be here, and me, saying, will you do this again? And will you come in on a Sunday? And in the morning, right after a big Gopher game. And so thank you all for being here once again and being a part of this family weekend. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mannix. So thank you for them being here, and thank you for you all being here too.
Thank you. Thanks, Gavin, and thanks for all that you do for our families. We appreciate it. As Gavin mentioned, my name is Mannix Clark. I work in the Housing and Residential Life Office, and I am excited to be here with my colleagues. We have worked together, the three of us, for a very long time in our department. So hopefully today you will get a good rounding of what your student can expect if they're at the point of looking for off-campus housing, if they live on campus looking for off-campus housing, if they live off campus now and looking to navigate the market. We will try to provide you some guidance today. I will start us off. Mine will be much shorter than my colleagues, but that means all the information will be there. We will all be here at the end to answer some questions for you. I always tell people when I talk, I'm the only Mannix in Housing and Residential Life. So if you send us an email, if you have a question afterwards on if your student lives with us today or something about next year, please feel free to send me an email. I will always get back to you to make sure that you get your question answered. Let me see here. See if I can. Oh, there we go. All right. Returning to campus. You all are some of the first to know what's going to happen with us next year. We're going to do things a little bit differently. I will admit up front, we have not finalized everything yet. Our hope is to have what will happen as it relates to choosing housing if a student chooses to live on campus next year by the middle of November. On November 12th, as Kendra will talk about a little bit more, we have an off-campus housing fair. At that time, we hope to have all of our information set to let students know what will happen with next year in on-campus housing. For those of you who have students who lived with us or your students who live with us right now who are first-year students, our first-year class this year was bigger than it has been the last several years. So we house more students, and our commitment has always been to house first-year students. In addition, we also like to house returning students if they like to return with us. We usually end up with somewhere between 18 and 20% of first-year students who choose to live a second year. This coming year, that probably will drop to about 15%, and part of the reason I will tell you why. In 2017, the university entered a master lease with the Radius apartment building where we managed all the things inside the building, but the university did not own that building. We were doing that when Pioneer was under renovation as we went through that process. Our goal always was not to have that building for the long term. We've made the decision that on July 31st of next year, we will end that lease arrangement and we will just go back to the buildings that the university owns to manage. With that was caused us to do something, especially with returning students, where there may not be as much space as we had previously for returning students to return to campus. We are also in the midst of a major system upgrade we're changing systems that we're on. So it's going to change our timeline. Probably for about the last 7 or 8 years, we've done our room sign-up process in the fall. There's always been a little bit of kind of plug and play. Is it really that the university, because we believe that the students should wait a little bit longer to sign up for their housing when they go off campus, knowing what the market has a little bit different with that, and part of that to make sure that they know who their roommates may be, who they want to have all that there. So we're going to actually move our room sign up process from the fall semester to February. So all that information will be available come November. And that's why I will say that. So that's why I mentioned out there again, Mannix, only person in housing. If it comes up that your student is interested or you'd like your student to consider that and you have more questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to walk through it or have one of our team members really walk you through that process. But we will still have residence halls and apartments. In our system today, we have 9 residence halls, which we will have still, and then we will have 3 apartment buildings that we will have. In our 9 residence halls, you'll see on the left side, some of those residence halls are first-year student-only buildings. So they will remain first-year students only. But we will have space for returning students to be in 17th Avenue, Bailey Hall, Centennial, some space in Middlebrook, limited space in Comstock, only the Living Learning Community, and then in Pioneer, there will be some limited space. So there will be space for returning students because it's important for us. Part of what you try to do when you create a residential community, you like to have students who've lived there a year to be around students who've been there their first year. So that is part of our process. In addition, we have 3 apartment buildings that also will be available for returning students to sign up. Unique benefits I always talk about of just returning to campus. Our research still will show students who live on campus a second year still do better than their counterparts who choose to live off campus. But like I said, we limit where people can live. We don't limit retention. We still invite every student to live with us, but historically, because of where we limit students to live, students make different decisions, and some choose to go off campus after they have that year. So some students also choose to live with us in our apartments because they have space there that may be a nice transition when they're moving off campus. So I do think there are some unique benefits. If you go to our website, you'll see that. Also, after today, if you go to our website and you put in room sign up, you will see some of this information that I'm talking about today. And that's where we're going to put the information at as we move forward. Living Learning Communities, excuse me. We have several different learning communities that second year students can be a part of. I've listed them up there. There's a second year learning community that's really popular with our students. There's one in science engineering, and there's a general one. That's what a lot of our students do. The one in science engineering is located in Pioneer. The general one is located in Udolph. That also gives students that opportunity for that second year if they want to go through that process as well, to do that. But there's other different learning communities that I just mentioned there. I have that. Contract length. This will be a little tricky, and I will give you a little bit of snippet of why. This is one of the reasons why it's taken us a little bit longer. When we entered into the radius lease, it used to be you had to be there 11.5 months. Then we changed the radius lease to a 9.5 months lease, like many of our other apartments. Today, Keeler has an 11.5 month lease. That may change next year, and that's part of why we have not determined that. Part of that's some of the financial decisions that we are still looking at. But as we eliminate the radius lease, we want to look at our apartments all having the same contract periods. So that's one of the things that we are looking at. So you will see there, but most of our residence halls, if you're a student now lives with us, or if you're a student and you live in a residence hall, you will see that. The thing, like I said, that Keeler one will change. The other thing to look at and to keep in mind, Keeler is all, for the most part, individual private bedrooms in a shared apartment. Udolph has kind of a mixture. They have some, they're kind of suite apartments, and there's some private bedrooms and there's some shared bedrooms. Wilkins is the other apartment that also has some private bedrooms, some shared bedrooms. What we will have in Centennial's mostly singles, because most of the time our second year students a lot of times like single rooms. And then Pioneer and 17th Avenue are kind of traditional doubles, just to give you a wide view of what your student, what you may expect. I won't go into off-campus options because Kendra will talk about that, but I'm happy to talk about that later because housing manages off-campus listing service. So there's clearly some things there. But really what I would leave you at, like I said, I will be here to answer questions later. Our process will change. It will be available. We do expect, like I said, to have space. We're reserving space for at least 15 to 20% of the first year students to stay with us again. But we will do our process a little bit later. We'll talk about some market stuff as that go through. I think I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Mark, and I'll see if I can figure out how to, or I may see if Gavin can help me figure out how to get his stuff, because I don't want to mess up the. Let's see.
Hopefully he can get to my slides, because my grandson isn't here to get them.
You don't need your recommendation PowerPoint. Oh, but it's not showing on the screen.
Okay.
It's just in your way.
Well, good morning. My name is Mark Karen. I'm an attorney and director of student legal services. So I'm going to speak for the next 6 or 7 hours. We call 600-page documents brief. Anyhow, first question is, how many of your students have their own attorney? If you could raise your hand. A couple. Well, actually, it's a trick question. Everybody has their own attorney because all the students are entitled to utilize student legal services. And we were established by students, and we solely and exclusively represent and assist students. And students don't have to be in trouble to utilize our services. For instance, we will do wills, We do healthcare directives, we do POAs if students are going to be doing study abroad. And we review the leases, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, and which we encourage the students to come and do that. One of the things that goes along with rental and with being a student now here for 4 or 5 weeks that they've been on campus is that they have to find a roommate, and they're already thinking about where they're going to live next year. And you're probably getting calls like, I don't know what I should do and this and that. And there's a lot of stress. And so this is actually a program that was done by St. Mary's Hospital down at Rochester. And I'm going to show you some pictures and they're identical. And the more stress that a student or you are under, the more differences that you'll see in the photo. Hopefully you didn't see anything different. As I said about us, we were established in 1977 and by students, and part of that was in response to the adoption of 26th Amendment to the Constitution, which lowered the age of majority from 21 to 18. And I was a student at the university last century, and I couldn't have my own credit card. I couldn't sign a lease. I couldn't do those kinds of things that all of the students can do here now, because everyone is an adult and they face the same responsibilities and they have the same rights. But we want to ensure and make sure that those rights are vindicated and that they have those rights. So we're located on West Bank in the West Bank Skyway building. We're open every day, and students can either drop in to make an appointment. The easiest way to do it is online. And over there, I have some brochures, some highlighters, and I don't know if students use highlighters anymore because I know you can't highlight a computer screen. But I think that's a throwback to when I was at school, when I literally highlighted everything so it did no good anyhow. So anyhow, please pick up highlighters and the brochures, and it'll explain about our services. And there is no fee. All right, so it's all included in the student service fee. So there is no fee for our services. So this is our logo. We've given Goldie the scales of justice and a gavel. Violates trademark and copyright laws, but the university has been kind enough not to sue us. As I said, no charge, confidential, and if we can't provide assistance, we have a referral list of resources and attorneys in the community that will provide assistance in certain areas, such as in business and some other kinds of things, at a reduced or no cost basis. So these are the major areas of our practice. And as you can see in landlord tenant, one of the things is lease reviews, maintenance and repairs. If there are issues when they move into various houses or into apartment buildings, wherever they might be, if they are experiencing difficulty in having repairs made, have them come to us and we can assist with that. Okay. And one of the other major areas of our practice, and you can see it down there, is immigration. And we have 2 attorneys that do immigration, in that we have about 11,000 international students here at the university now. One of the things that's on the bottom, it says internship opportunities. If any of your students are interested in going into law or a law-related profession, we have various kinds of programs which will allow them to explore that. We have one that's called Emerging Leaders in the Law, which we go through a series of programs where they can talk to the admissions people from the law schools. They can talk to financial people at the law schools, find out what it's like. We do mock law school classes. Next week, we're taking that group down to the Minnesota Court of Appeals and Supreme Court, where they'll sit in on some hearings, get to go back into the chambers with the judges and talk to them, and then go out to lunch with the judges and the justices from the Minnesota Supreme Court. So it's an excellent program if anybody is interested in that. So that's this career exploration. Where will students live? I'm gonna go through this one real quick because Kendra's gonna spend a lot more time on that. But one of the things obviously is identifying what are the needs and what are they looking for, okay, in the apartments. And one of the things that we've had happen in the last 6 years twice now is students have rented initially a hole in the ground, okay? There was the Arrow, formerly called Prime Place, and then Identity, where many students rented, leased, both of them being over 400 units. And then on August 2nd, the day after they paid their first month's rent, they received a letter saying, you can't move in. Okay, we aren't ready for you. So now what? Okay, so that's one of the things that we want to provide assistance in. And I'll talk more about it, but one of the things that our office did and one of the attorneys in our office did was work very closely with Minnesota State Legislature, which now has passed a state law that provides protection in the event that the building that they're supposed to be moving into on the date promised, if it's not ready, how they can terminate their lease, or there's 3 options, and I'll get into that after. But some of the things, obviously, and like I said, Kendra will talk a lot more about this, is what are their needs, okay, and what are they looking for? There's a lot of options that are available. And you still see cranes as you drive around here and everything else, because there's a lot of new construction that's still going up. So renting near campus or not near campus, if there's a bus or effective ways of getting there, safety concerns, etc. So, so these are some of the resources, obviously. Student Legal Services, Kendra's contact information is on there as well, and she's got a fantastic website with a lot of information and a course that helps people. And any kind of questions that students have, they're free to utilize our service and then HRL. Okay. So how do you get effective information, and what do you have to watch out for? A lot of people use Google, right? But like anything else, anybody can put anything they want out there, okay? It's the World Wide Web, and there is no fact checking. So what is on there? And so some of the things that we always suggest is make sure you don't just look at pictures that are online, but you go to the property. You walk through the property. You talk to possibly the current renters or people who have rented there and find out if they like it or if they don't like it. If the ownership is responsive to their needs. Is there something in the front of the building that identifies who to contact with a phone number if there are any difficulties or problems? So all of those kinds of considerations. So if they get statements, promises or affirmations that are made, oh, we're putting in new carpeting, okay? Make sure it's in writing, okay? Because they may say, well, yeah, we are going to put in new carpeting in 2033 or whatever it might be. So make sure that whatever changes or modifications, because there's rules of evidence that talk about that limit that oral statements may not be binding. So there is a right to inspect. And prior to move-in, that's a relatively new statute, 504 B 182. So I hope you're taking notes. There is a quiz at the, so that it's a newer statute that gives tenants the right to inspect and go through. And they make a request. There is also the right at the conclusion to have the landlord go through with them to make sure when they're moving out that the landlord doesn't try and say, well, there are these particular problems. And so we'll talk more about that kind of information as well. Don't feel pressured at this point in time. And again, Kendra can talk more about this. As to renting, there are a lot of places on campus, okay? And there are newer places that offer the amenities. This wasn't necessarily true 5, 6, 7 years ago before the pandemic, where there were fewer of the newer buildings with the amenities and all, everything that was being offered. But now there is opportunities. So, you know, one of the things that happens frequently is the landlord will say, oh, you know, I got 3 other people who are coming in here that are, and if you don't sign now, somebody's going to. And so it does put a lot of pressure on them. Reading the leases. This is actually a lease that exists on campus. Not that you can read it or anything else there, but it is a 17-page lease with a 47-page addendum. Okay. And what has happened is that with many of the landlords and with many of the building owners, they're owned by major corporations, hedge funds, et cetera, that are out of state. And they utilize the same contract for the buildings that they own in and around the University of Minnesota as the University of Texas in Austin or Boulder or anything else. And they have a caveat at the end that says, any of the provisions that are contrary to your states don't apply. I'm not sure how many of your students are totally versed in Chapter 504B of the Minnesota statutes. Okay, so one of the things that we can do is go through the leases, and that's why we encourage the students, if they have any questions before they sign. And this is another thing that they can do. You can click and sign now. You know, electronic signatures are very, very common. So my wife used to always say, click, you know, and because I was a notorious clicker on the computer, but don't click until you know that that's something that you want to do. Bring the leases in. We will review them. A lease is a contract. And because it's a contract, it's negotiable. So the provisions that are in there are also negotiable. Okay, it doesn't mean that they will alter it, but we can identify so that they understand what those provisions are, and that if it's something that would be a deal breaker, they can try and negotiate it. So newer tenant protections, and this is some of the things that our office has worked with state legislature on, which is very, very important. On the front page of the lease now, there has to be a specific start and end date. And the reason that that's there is that many of the properties we're putting in, your lease begins on September 1st and ends on August 31st. And then hidden in the lease, it says you agree to vacate on August 15th, so we can prepare the property for the next tenant. So they had what were called short-end leases. That is no longer valid. If they have that kind of a provision, the lease is invalid. The specific start and end date has to be in there. And if they have a short term or an end date, they have to abate or return that portion, that daily portion of the rent to the tenant. Okay? Unit specificity, very important, because oftentimes they would say, okay, you're going to go into this unit. And then all of a sudden they'd come and they go, well, the people who are there decided to stay. So now we're going to give you the exact same unit. Okay, except it's in the basement, and instead of 2 bathrooms, it's 1 bathroom. And instead of 2 bedrooms, it's 1 with bunk beds. Okay, so we see those kinds of things. So unit specificity is now a requirement. Okay. And then, as I said, the prorated rent and that. And then there's the statute now. And there's also a Minneapolis City ordinance that was adopted prior to the statute that says if the building is not ready for occupancy on the date provided, the tenant has 3 options. They can terminate and receive a refund of any and all monies that were paid. The current, that landlord can find alternative housing that is suitable and that the tenant is satisfied with, or they can give them some kind of an abatement on the costs and so that they can find alternatives. So these are the things I've already talked about that we can provide, and we can, as far as assistance goes. Utility issues come up, especially if it's a home and an older home. This is an older part of the city, Marcy Homes and some of the other areas, and some of the students will elect to rent a home. And it might be a duplex or a fourplex or whatever it might be. And so utilities become an issue as to who signs for the utilities. How are they going to divide up the utilities? Who's responsible for the utilities? Those are also part and concerns that come up. The other thing is, if the landlord places a requirement in the lease that the tenant is responsible for all snow removal or maintaining the property and everything else, they have to give consideration for that. They can't just put that in there. Okay, so those are some things to watch out for, especially in the homes. Move out procedures, and we have on our website sample checklists for both moving in and moving out. And we will work with the students. So if there's ever a question, tell them to come to see us. As I said, we have 4 professionals that work almost exclusively in landlord tenant, because it has it's about 47% of the work that we do. Leasing vocabulary, just a couple of quick things. Security deposit. Landlords will oftentimes ask for a security deposit that's equal to 1 month's rent. It usually begins, like I said, September 1st and in the following August. But some landlords are no longer utilizing security deposits, and they don't want to use a security deposit because then they say, well, you caused these damages, and then they turn it over to collections instead, so that they feel it's a little more power on their part if it goes to a collection agency to try and collect than if they have a security deposit. But we have a lot of cases that we assist students in the recovery of their security deposits. So. Lease term, already talked about that. It has to be on there. Most of the leases are 1 year. Mannix will talk about some options, I think, that the university may have that are 9 month, but it's very rare here that you'll find a 9 month, kind of lease. So it's usually a year. This is, one of the things that we talk about, which is the importance of making sure you make the appropriate type of determination. This is, according to the Star Tribune, the most recent statistics in Minneapolis, studio, which I believe they said was 520 square feet, 1,083, a 1 bedroom, 1,354, and a 2 bedroom, 2,026. So those are some major considerations, obviously, costs and other kinds of things, and what are you going to get back? Making sure, and one of the things that is in here is the total rent due, and are you going to be asked to sign what is called a joint and several liability contract, which means that if there are 4 tenants, they are each jointly and severally responsible for the entire amount. Now, why is that important? Because if one of them were to leave, if it was $1,000 a month so that each one would be paying $250, the other 3 would now be responsible for the entire $1,000. I use $1,000 because I suck at math and I could divide that. Okay. So that's one of the things. The other thing is, are they going to require a guarantor, meaning you, in most likelihood, okay, a parent? Are they going to require that you sign as a guarantor, that you will be responsible for any deficiencies in any kind of rent? Okay. But one of the things that students want to make sure that they find out is, do any of the possible roommates plan on doing a study abroad and leaving? Or if there's anything else that could result in them terminating their lease. Okay. And then if they're going to do that, subletting is a possibility. We provide assistance in helping the students look for and try and promote subletting, but there might be a lease provision that prohibits subletting and that the landlord has to do the subletting. And there might be a provision in the lease that says, and if we have to sublet, we're going to charge you another $1,500 or $2,000 to sublet. So some of those kinds of provisions, we worked with the legislature. Legislature passed, and Minnesota now has a mitigation of damages statute, which requires landlords to actually mitigate their damages instead of pursuing solely and exclusively against the current tenants. Already talked about the short-end leases and the short-term provisions. That's just a statute, not that you need to do that. The right to privacy, okay? Landlords must give at least 24 hours notice before entering the property, okay? Now, a tenant can agree to lessen that time, or if it's an emergency type of situation, they can get in there, okay? Early renewal. This just became effective that if it's a lease of 10 months or longer, the landlord, instead of, and this was a very common practice, that 2 weeks after the tenancy began, they would come to the student tenant and say, all right, are you going to live here next year? And it's like, I don't know where I'm going to be next year. Well, we got to know, okay? And again, a lot of pressure. New statute says if it's a lease of 10 months or longer, they have to wait at least 6 months before they can ask you to renew. So it relieves a lot of that stress and pressure. All right, talked about the security deposit already. We work closely with housing and inspections. And so we encourage students, if they're having difficulty and if it's a code violation kind of situation or poses any kind of danger, the locks on the doors don't work, the windows are broken, whatever it might be, that they call, or more importantly, I don't know how many of you are from Minnesota, but it gets a little colder here in December and January. Not much, 60, 70 degrees cooler. But if the furnace doesn't work, or if there's other kinds of problems, those are things that need and require immediate attention. And so working with that. Already talked about E. Renter's insurance. Okay. This is something I really think is really important and good to have. Not that Jake and Flo and I get along very well, but renter's insurance is very inexpensive. And it figures out usually to be about $10 to $12 a month, because they're going to have their computers, because their bicycles, because other kinds of things. So what I encourage students to do is, first of all, find out and have you, the parents, contact your own insurance company and find out, is my student covered under our homeowners away? Because some will, not all, and not that many, but it's possible. Okay. And if they don't, get renter's insurance. It's very inexpensive protection. Craigslist or anything else, if they're going to rent or if they're going to sublease, one of the common scams is that students will say, I put it out on Craigslist or I put it on Google or something, and somebody told me that they're going to sublease my apartment and they're going to pay me the $500 a month over the summer that I'm asking for, the $1,500, and they're going to send me a check for $4,000, and I should send them back, because they're going to let me keep an extra $500. I should send them back a money order for $2,000. Scam. Okay. Why would they send you $4,000? It doesn't make sense. But it's very, very sophisticated. We've had people who have actually had fraudulent IRS tax return checks, kind of. And you can tell because those are encrypted. If you go to the copy machine and you try and copy it, if it's a real check, it'll come out black. If it's not a real check, it'll copy. Okay. So, but tell them to make sure that they watch out for those types of scams. And couple of last comments that I'll make. Having a party, if you're going to have a party, or if they're going to have a party, keep it inside. Talk to neighbors. Have a sober host. Food, offer alternatives to any kind of alcohol. Because we have something in Minneapolis and in St. Paul that is called the social host. And a social host means that if you're having a party or a get-together with 3 or more people, a gathering, an event. So this is a gathering or an event. But if you 3 or more people anywhere in the city, and someone is under the age of 21 that could have access to alcohol, it violates the statute. Okay, so cannabis. it's legal in Minnesota, although I don't know that it's available, but it's at least they passed this. The bill, it became legal August 1st of 2023. The author isn't really sure what the bill says, so I'm not sure that anybody else understands it either. But the fact is that landlords have the right to restrict or put in the lease that cannabis cannot be used, and it's a lease violation if it is. If the landlord receives any federal assistance, Title VIII housing or any HUD or any other kind of federal funding, if cannabis is still illegal under federal law, and therefore it violates. And so it can't happen, okay, even though it's it's legal, okay? Already talked about social host. Student conduct code, I'm supposed to tell you that, you know, violations of these kinds of things can subject a student to student conduct code, discipline and involvement. I'm going to pass it off to Kendra, and you know, hopefully you have some questions after. We'll stick around. Mannix and I will stick around. And like I said, over there's some brochures. Please feel free to pick them up, and thank you for coming, and thank you for sending your students.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Kendra Tironi, and I'm the program director for Off-Campus Living. And so Off-Campus Living, we are a resource on campus. Oh, I got to figure out how to get to my next slide here. Oh, hold on. Oh, here we go. I just got to get my mouse in the right place. All right. All right. So technology, right? You know, I have a couple of college degrees, but that's okay. All right. So what we do in Off-Campus Living, we provide resources for all the students who rent in the near neighborhoods and all the students who commute from home. So basically any student who's not in a residence hall is our audience. We have a couple different areas of our office that I'll quickly go over before I go into the specifics on off-campus renting as a resource for you. So commuter engagement, I have several student staff in my office. We have a student organization called the Commuter Connection that has space over in Memorial Union and Kaufman. In room 204, if your students haven't checked that out yet. And it's a great place where we do social programming there, as well as resource sharing. We offer free printing for students, a place for them to warm up meals, a refrigerator from the store things, all sorts of good things like that. We have a really active commuter Discord, and that is a Discord channel where commuter students are encouraged to engage when they're at home or even on campus to communicate with each other and whatnot. That was really useful during COVID when students were, you know, doing classes online, but we've kept it going, and we do some virtual programming as well as in-person programming there. And then Gopher Hall is, we have an online campus course for commuter students targeted at first-year commuter students to introduce them to resources that will help them as they acclimate to campus. We do neighborhood outreach. We try to encourage students to get engaged in volunteer opportunities that might relate to their major, might not. We do community organizing. We partner with neighborhood associations as well as different community organizations in the neighborhoods to get students connected there. And we also have projects that focus on things like livability, sustainability, safety, basic needs. Right now, we're trying to encourage voter registration, doing get out the vote, and supporting student organizations that are doing that as well. We also do apartment outreach, wherein we try to communicate with apartment managers and have ongoing communication with them throughout the year and push out resource information to them to share with their tenants. Because we find that often students in apartments don't have as much communication from the university, right? When a student's in the residence halls, the community advisors are sharing lots of great information with them. But when a student moves off, some apartments do have student staff that'll do outreach or programming, but not many. So we're trying to work with the managers and management to push out that information We also really try to encourage your students to follow us on socials to try and get that information out to them. But renter education is the main piece that I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to go over some of the things that are bulleted here more specifically through the presentation. So I want to highlight a couple resources for renters that we offer through our office or that other offices offer that we partner on. So Roommate Finder is a tool that our office hosts. It's basically, it was actually started by students, was started by graduate and professional students, and then they looked for a place to take it over and take it on to keep it going. And so our office took on Roommate Finder, and now we offer it for undergraduate students as well as graduate and professional students. It's basically a Google form the students will fill out. They file a request online with their information, and we go through and we actually verify if the person requesting it is actually a student. Are they enrolled? Are they admitted? And if they are, then we will add their list to the spreadsheet. And then we give all the students that have permission to see it access, and they go through and they can sort the list themselves. And they can try to see, oh, who else is looking for the same price points I am, the same neighborhoods I am? Are they open to pets? Do they smoke? Do they not? Things like that. And they can sort that list, and they have to reach out themselves. So they have to take a little initiative to contact others to find out if they might want to live together. We as university staff, unfortunately, are not able to pair people up. So our legal counsel for the university has not given us permission to do that. So this is the method that we've come up with right now that seems to be working pretty well. So we typically have, in any semester, there's different seasons for it. So right now, undergraduate students are starting to sign up for Roommate Finder. If they're feeling the pressure, again, like Mark mentioned, we tell students, you don't have to sign right now. You've got time to sign. But apartment complexes are starting to do heavy promotions to try and recruit students to sign leases. And so students will they'll start looking and they'll start talking to each other, and they'll start feeling pressure from each other and the apartments. Oh, we need to do this right now. They don't, but we've got that Roommate Finder. So you'll see a lot of undergrads starting to sign up in October if they're not sure about who they want to live with. Maybe they haven't met enough people yet. It's just it can be a stressful time, and we want to encourage them to not be stressed, but hopefully this tool will help them. We find graduate and professional students are often using it during spring semester. They get admitted February, March, and they'll start looking for when they're going to move in fall. So, but we typically have several hundred students at any one time on the form taking advantage of that. We also have a housing group on Facebook and a Roommate Finder group on Facebook that we are the administrators for. Now, a caveat here, there are multiple groups about University of Minnesota housing, roommates, sublets on Facebook. Only one of them has my office or the university as an actual administrator. A lot of them are actually public groups that are run by private companies that are basically using it as an advertising forum. And there's a lot of spam on those sites. Ours is, we do, again, it's a private group. Students have to request to join it. And we actually go through and I pay my staff and we spend time to verify every single person. Are they an admitted or enrolled student? And only students are allowed. Sometimes I will make exceptions for like postdoc, visiting professors, things of that nature. But I ask them to disclose. On rare occasions, I'll allow a parent to join the group because sometimes they'll say, my student's not on Facebook and they will not join Facebook and I need to help them with this process. On those rare occasions, I will sometimes make exceptions to allow parents to be in the group, but they need to disclose. I am the parent of a student. I'm assisting them get this information, and they need to leave the group immediately when they're done finding a roommate or a sublet and whatnot for the housing group and the Roommate Finder group. So we also have the off-campus listing service that's not run by my office. It's run by Maddox's office, Housing and Residential Life, but we heavily promote it. And we do have a straight gateway on our site. When you go to the main page of our website, you'll find it there. You'll find a link to the off-campus listing service. This is a place where the apartments pay to advertise their properties. And so it's something where we want students to be aware of that. So there is that fiscal relationship between the apartment complexes. We do not inspect any of the properties. We do, however, have a mechanism where properties that are, in our opinion, and I'll go maybe a little more in depth on a later slide, that properties that are not conducting themselves in a manner that we have basically a non-compliance list. We have an off-campus housing program policy, and if a property has 3 or more unresolved or substantiated student-initiated complaints filed with our Student Legal Service Office, or if we're notified by the city, that they're in violation, that they're on the good cause list and they're not allowed to list there. So we don't inspect places, but some of the worst properties aren't on our list. And so students should ask if they're, checking places out and they know notice they're not on the list, they might want to ask why in that way. All right. The next thing I'm going to touch base on here is our renter education course. So we have a course on Canvas. Canvas is the platform that your students use for all of their classes. Typically have an online home on Canvas. And so we've created a renter education course there. Basically, we've taken a lot of the information that Student Legal Service and I do presentations together for renter housing workshops. And we've taken all that information, we've put it online, and we've tried to get a little more in depth. Those workshops are typically an hour long. This course might take them more than an hour to do if they do all the parts of it, but it's up to them. There's 11 modules. They can do 1, they can do 5, they can do all 11. It's totally up to them and whatnot. And then I do have a little list here so you can kind of see what some of those topics are. We've got a QR code there too. They can find the link online as well. So, but it goes over everything from the legal aspects of what to look for in a lease, the red flags, things to think about when touring, how to document your place when you move in, to just being aware of the neighborhoods and what resources and how to find your, when your garbage collection and recycling days are, if you're moving into like the house areas and whatnot, city services, all sorts of things. So that is available to your students, and we think it's a great resource that's available to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do, I think, have a pretty good website, ocl.umn.edu. We encourage you and your student to check it out. We do have lots of different resources there for commuting as well as for renting. One particular section of my website I want to highlight for you, which I kind of referenced just a few moments ago, is our section that's called Do Your Research in the Non-Compliance List. So as I mentioned, we do have this off-campus housing program policy in which we do have properties that when they're added to the list, they are not allowed to participate in our off-campus housing fair. They're not allowed to participate in our off-campus listing service, and they're not allowed to advertise on campus. So we try to get the word out to athletics and orientation and transition experiences, student unions and activities, all the places where people might be advertising, and to make sure they're checking that if they do have apartment complexes, asking to advertise with them. So we do have a lot of information on the website about that non-compliance list and whatnot. I do wanted to share like students, we're not telling them not to rent with these properties. They can rent wherever they like. We want them to ask good questions. We want students to be their own best advocate when they are researching and looking at properties. So it's important to us that we are transparent about this. This is something, we've had this list of folks that we don't invite to our programs for probably 20 something years or more. We created the list online in 2017 at the request of our undergraduate student government, who says, you know what, if you as offices know you don't think we should be doing business with places, but you should let us know and give us the information so we can do the research, we can ask the questions and make good decisions for ourselves, which is exactly what we want to do. So that's how long that list has been up. The great thing about it is it's been really motivating for apartment complexes to get off the list, which is what we want. My goal would be to have 0 apartments on that list eventually. And we've had 2 or 3 work with our student legal service, and they've been able to get off the list. We have 2 complexes right now that are working to get off the list. So that is always our goal. So we're excited about that. All right. So I do want to encourage you. We've mentioned several people have mentioned the off-campus housing fair. This is coming up on November 12th from 10 to 2. Again, we want you to know you do not need to sign a lease this soon, but because the pressures of the market have forced students to be looking so early, we want to make sure we're getting resource information out to you when you're looking. So I'm kind of excited to hear that Housing and Residential Life is pushing back their renewal process to February, and that may help slow down this pressure on students to sign leases. You need to take time to figure out what you want and what works best for you. All of our offices have been very frustrated by the fact that, because when I first started in 2003 here at the university, we used to do our housing fair in March. Is when it always happened. It always happened after spring break. And as the pressures from the market moved, we had to move things back because students started searching earlier and earlier and earlier. Maybe we'll start to see a move back in the other direction. And maybe next year, maybe we can not host in November. Maybe we'll push it back to December or January. But we want you to get good resource information, but encourage you to, you don't feel like you have to sign right away. It is a chance to meet. We have property managers that have 20 units or higher that participate in that event. We also have community resources, as well as university departments, like Mark's office will be there, mine will be there, as well as city resources like city inspectors. We try to get Metro Transit out, all sorts of things. Lots of swag, free food. We want you to take advantage of that. With our renter education workshops, we actually had a meeting earlier this week where we set the dates. We are still getting the official building and rooms confirmed. So I didn't want to put up building and room numbers yet because they aren't confirmed yet from Housing and Residential Life. But these are the dates where we will be hosting our housing workshops out in the residence halls. And we typically tend to be at one of the locations in Superblock, 17th Avenue Residence Hall, Middlebrook, Bailey, and Sanford. Is typically where we're often doing those presentations. So I anticipate those getting filled in. You can always follow us on social media, our office as well as Student Legal Service, and we'll have those confirmations probably up next week, but it just wasn't in time for this weekend. So all those are typically at 6 o'clock. As I mentioned, like researching when you find a property, you know, as you are looking, as your students are doing their search, it's we really want to encourage them to take some extra steps when they think there's, oh, a place I really might like, just to verify information for themselves and make sure they're making the best decision. So one, searching the property information site for the city, checking to see who the actual owner of the property is, who the taxpayer is it an LLC, and whatnot. Calling 311 and asking, does that particular property owner have any ongoing problems? They can ask, can you check and tell me what problems have been happening at that address? Are there code violations that have been happening recurringly in the previous years? They can also check that non-compliance list and see if that property is on there. And if so, you know, ask that property owner some questions, ask that, you know, the leasing staff questions about why they're on the list, what are they doing to get off, how are they handling the problems that have come up. We really encourage them to also talk to current tenants to get that shared living experience, like how has it been living here? Are your maintenance requests responded to in a timely manner? Would you recommend this to others? That can be really important. And then number 5, discuss any potential concerns that arise with your potential landlord. It's really important to have strong communication, and you'll want to pay attention. Do they answer your questions? Are they direct about it? If you're emailing the questions in, do they respond to you or do they blow you off? If they're blowing you off during your search process, probably going to blow you off while you're a tenant as well. So it's just things to pay attention to and be aware of. I always like to highlight quickly kind of just a brief overview of what some of the neighborhood areas are by campus and where our students tend to rent. So I think the most common neighborhoods that our students, undergraduate students rent in are the East Bank neighborhoods. And that's Marcy Homes, Southeast Como, Prospect Park. These particular neighborhoods are the 3 oldest neighborhoods in the city of Minneapolis, which means if you're looking at house rentals, some of those houses are going to be some of the oldest houses in Minneapolis, in Marcy Homes in particular, but some really cool houses in that way. We also have lots of apartment complexes, as you'll see, ranging from, you know, duplexes up to, you know, 16 plexes and, you know, even obviously high rises that'll have hundreds of units. So we want students to kind of think, you know, about that. Do they want apartments? Do they want houses? Work through that. The West Bank neighborhood, Cedar Riverside and Seward, we do have some students that'll rent there, but there's a lot of non-students renting in those neighborhoods. We tend to find more graduate students and non-students are in the West Bank neighborhoods, but there are lots of great places in that area. We also have a lot of housing around the St. Paul campus. And again, not as many students choose to rent there. But those that are taking, you know, that are in CFANs or, you know, some CBS students, they'll choose to be near the St. Paul campus. But it is like the rental percentages there are probably 50%, whereas like the East Bank neighborhoods, the West Bank neighborhoods, the rental percentages in those neighborhoods are closer to 90%. So you can kind of see some differences there. And then I always like to point out to students, they may not necessarily think about it right away on their own when they're doing a search, but Northeast Minneapolis is actually really convenient and often less expensive than renting in East Bank or West Bank or near St. Paul. So Beltrami, St. Anthony East or West, they're cheaper. You can bike from there and there's lots of busing. So your commute from Northeast can often be the same distance as you would biking or walking from like East Bank neighborhoods. So just something to keep in mind in that way. So other precautions I'd like to share, safety reminders. It's really important that students lock up everything. So we're in an urban area, Minneapolis and St. Paul, obviously urban areas. There's crime everywhere, right? It's nothing new to us. Every urban community has this. So we do want to encourage students to lock their bike, to lock their doors, keep their windows locked when they're not at home. It's just important. And especially we find a lot of students will like, oh, well, my roommate's still home, so I'm not going to lock the door. I would encourage you to lock the door even when your roommate's home. Always have keys. If you're locked out, use your phone, call someone that's inside to let you in. Everyone should be carrying their keys with them and whatnot. And it's really important to lock your cars. We do see a lot, especially in winter, where in Minnesota, because it's cold, students often maybe want to warm up the car before they're going somewhere, and they'll often leave it unlocked while they're warming it up. Having a remote starter is a really good investment. Having a second set of keys, if you only know, to have the car running, if you need to have the key in the ignition for it to warm up and keep the car locked. We find a lot of Uber drivers, like delivery, food, DoorDash, end up getting vehicles stolen if they hop out. Pizza delivery drivers, they hop out of their car, they leave it running, but unlocked, and the vehicles might get stolen. So just a caveat on that. So we want to try and curb that pattern. And obviously locking your bike properly. Bike theft is the biggest theft that we have. So we encourage students to use a U-lock as well as a cable lock, to use two in combination, and always make sure they're locking it through the frame and the wheel to, into the post. So emergency things, it's really important in your rental location that your student be aware of where the emergency exits are. We strongly encourage them to not disable their smoke detectors. So if they're burning popcorn or pizza in the oven, don't take the batteries out. We want that to still be functional. So we have had house fires and we have lost students. My first year here, when I first started, we lost 3 students in a house fire 2 weeks before I started. So my first task as a staff member here at the U was helping to plan a memorial tree planting in a local park to honor those students. We've had fires since then, not student deaths, thank goodness, but it does happen. I don't say that to be threatening or anything, but like we want people, that particular location where the students passed, they had disabled their smoke detector earlier in the day, and individuals after coming home from partying were out on they had upholstered furniture on their front porch, and someone had been smoking a cigarette. The ember landed. They went in to go sleep it off, and the fire started on the front porch and blocked the main exit area. That's why knowing where your emergency exits are really important. So it's just something to pay attention to, and obviously, pay attention if you are a smoker. Things like that can happen, but you never know. Getting things fixed is really important. It's important for you to put requests in. Most apartment complexes these days have online forms where you can make those requests, which is great because it kind of documents that you've submitted it. If you do have an old school landlord who just wants you to call it in, that's fine and can work if they're responsive, but if they're not responding to the phone call request, that's not a legal documentation that you could provide in housing court. So you would want to maybe do an email to document, because you could have that as proof. The online systems really are super helpful in that way. All right, a couple safety resources to highlight. We do have the 624 walk program, which you may be aware of, where we have security staff that'll walk with your student to or from, typically up to a mile off campus. You can call or request online. They actually have an online request now. That's super convenient as well. So students can do it right from their phone that way if they prefer. Go First Chauffeur is a student-run driving service that'll pick students up 7 days a week, 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. every day, and we'll drive them to areas close to campus. There is kind of a boundary map they can see online. They do use an app to request that ride. That's easy for students to download. They are closed over breaks, though, so be aware of that. Our blue light kiosks, hopefully when you were walking around our campus, you might have noticed those. They're all across our campus, but we also do have them at the edges of campus as well. And basically these are a direct phone and video connection to our police department. So basically when you can press the button, it's like, and then it calls 911 for you. It connects you to the dispatch, and you can let the dispatcher know your emergency or the help that might be needed. So we do encourage students to utilize that. Often, for example, if they're a victim of a robbery and their phone gets stolen, how do they let someone know their phone is gone? So by having these emergency kiosks available, that can be helpful. We do also utilize them. There's video on most of them, and the university, you may have heard in safety presentations during orientation, that our public safety department does have a video monitoring system. We have, I think, over 2,500 cameras right now. It might be even higher now. And they have great technology that'll zoom in when there's like one person approaching one person alone. It'll highlight those locations and bring that to the attention of the folks that are monitoring those videos, which we think is a pretty cool feature. So that way they can see a situation that's developing and maybe be aware of it before someone even calls for help to try and get assistance there. So our police officers do tend to arrive very quickly, normally within 1 to 3 minutes when they use these dispatch kiosks. So we also have the Rave Guardian safety app that we encourage students to take advantage of. This basically provides a virtual walking buddy. So if your person using it puts in their destination, how long it will take, and they've set up guardians that will be notified if they don't check in when they arrive at their location. So if it's someone who's walking alone, it could be a great option for them. Just for additional layer of security, they can list our public safety staff as one of the guardians if they want, and then individuals would call in to check with them like, hey, are you okay? Did you get to your destination? Or go look for them if they did not arrive at their destination as needed. So that's a nice option as well. All right, we do want to encourage folks to sign up for their neighborhood listserv if you are moving into the neighborhood. So the Diggytown neighborhood, Diggytown is actually a business district. It's not a neighborhood. It's in the Marcy Homes neighborhood. So many of your students will choose to live in the Diggytown area that is in Marcy Homes. Southeast Como as well, Prospect Park, they all have pretty active neighborhood associations. They do programming, they provide resources when there's issues with the city. Maybe there's construction going on, zoning, and things that might impact students and their experience in the neighborhoods. We try to make them aware of that. But being involved in their neighborhood is a great way to get connected. It's also great opportunities to build their resume. All of these neighborhoods have seats for students on their neighborhood boards, so they can get engaged and connected in that way. We do also like to encourage students to join Nextdoor. I know many of you as parents might be on Nextdoor. Yes, very commonly you'll see lots of lost cats and dogs and whatnot, but there's also lots of great safety information that can be shared from neighbors to neighbors on nextdoor.com. So we do encourage students to create an account there. And again, it's another way to find out about community involvement opportunities as well. I also like to highlight our Pack and Give Back program. This is a collaboration with my office with the reuse program here on campus and with Hennepin County Recycling. And so we really try to strongly encourage students to identify items that don't need to go in the trash, that are reusable and could be diverted from the waste stream. And so we do a pretty robust collection process in the residence halls every May when students are moving out. And again, in August, and when people are moving out of the neighborhoods, we work with the city of Minneapolis to try and do, sometimes they'll drive through and do some pickup of reusable items ahead of the trash routes, so the students could put things out on the curb to be picked up for donation. We do try to get information out to students about that via social media. There's these piles of trash, get really messy and whatnot, like scavengers will go through and try to pull out metals for recycling and whatnot. And so when students are moving out, and often we find they're in a rush and they don't start packing until the day before they have to move. So you'll see August 30th and 31st, all of a sudden these trash piles pop up in the neighborhoods. Many of the apartments will have, dumpsters available and recycling options for students, but a lot of the house rentals don't. And so we really want to encourage students, you should start thinking about packing a couple weeks early. You could start purging and throwing away things that you don't need. So that trash pile is smaller upon move out day, but you could also identify things that could be passed on to others that they either could donate to our Pack and Give Back program. They can bring it over to the reuse program, or they also could, put things up for donation. They could contact on Google. You could type in, donations, and you could have the Epilepsy Foundation or diabetes group or, the Vietnam Veterans group come out and pick up those donated items from you directly if you want. We do offer the things we collect from the residence halls back to students, kind of as a free exchange or swap. And we have free stores that are available during Welcome Week and that first week of class. We also do kind of a pop-up free store. It typically is mostly clothing. You might have seen that during Welcome Week, on the Tuesday of Welcome Week. That was in the hall at the Union. So we try to encourage that. So I always like to, so the location where people, if they want to drop off things instead, if they're out in the neighborhood already, they can bring things to that reuse warehouse at 883 29th Avenue. We do have a Facebook page that gets active around the time of when the program is going. So I also want to highlight that you'll find, and you should get an email from Housing and Residential Life about it if your students in the residence halls. We do have a great storage option that our reuse program has started offering to students. And that is, they'll offer storage for items. They'll provide these really boxes of different sizes that students can fill with their items. And they'll pick it up from the res hall for them, right? They'll bring them the box. Students can fill the box. They'll take the box back and they'll deliver it back to them at the res hall if they're coming back to the hall the following year, or they'll work with the student to pick it up from their location out on 29th Avenue. But it is for summer storage or short-term storage, because we often find we do have a lot of students, as Mark mentioned, in these short end leases where they have to move out like August 15th, but they can't move into their next place until September 1st. What do they do with their stuff for that 2 weeks? This is a great option. It's lower cost than, if you do a storage facility out in the neighborhoods, like an official business of a storage facility, they often will require you to sign a multi-month lease with them, and it can be more expensive when they only need storage for 3 weeks. Reuse has a program where they can just do the 1 month of storage, which is a great option and more affordable for our students. I want to encourage you to sign up for our newsletters. We have a newsletter for renters and a newsletter for those folks commuting from home. So I want to encourage you to do that. You can also check out our website. We do have the links to sign up for these newsletters on the bottom, on the footer of our website as well, if you're needing that. And then just wanted to share, we strongly encourage your students to follow us, or you to follow us on socials. We're pretty active on Insta and Facebook to reach you, not necessarily your student on Facebook, but right. And then we're trying to grow our TikTok and our YouTube as well, because that's where our students are. So we are available to do consultations on a housing search. If your student has questions about their housing search and not quite sure where to go, they can reach out to us. I or my student staff will be happy to meet with you. So we do offer that. We'll meet in person, we'll meet on Zoom, we'll meet on a phone call or just over email to answer their questions and try to be of help. And again, those Rent-A-Red workshops that we host in the residence halls are often super helpful, as well as that Renter Education Canvas course that we really strongly encourage your student to check out. So I think that is it for my slides. And I think we're going to open it up for questions for all three of us. So if Maddox and Mark want to come up. Yeah. Yeah, question. So the question was, when do students usually sign up for next year for off-campus apartments? And what we have found in the past is that students start their search in October or November, which is why we're pushing out this Rent-A-Red. We would prefer, now that this new legislation passed that Mark mentioned, where students can't be forced to renew until 6 months out, as that starts to be the norm, we'll see the housing search process move back a little bit, and it'll probably move closer to February for when. But the reality is, the apartment complexes, I meet with them, they've told me, Kendra, we're still going to ask. We're still going to ask them in the second week of October, do you want to renew your apartment? And hopefully they'll tell us. And if they don't, we can't require them to tell us until February, but we will keep asking every month until they decide, right? And so I think the students will see that as pressure. Well, my landlord's asking me if I'm coming back, I have to make a decision. So we find that a lot of students do start searching, unfortunately, in October, November. Again, want to reinforce, they do not need to sign a lease that soon. And we are overbuilt right now. We have more spaces available in the near neighborhoods than students to rent. So it really is an opportunity for the students to negotiate and to wait, to take their time. If they want to be in the locations that are the closest to the edge of campus, those will fill, right? And that's just the power of supply and demand, that the locations closest to the edge of campus, probably also the most expensive, right, will fill probably October, November. But if they're willing to live a couple blocks away, they could even, there'll be spaces still available in July, right? 6 blocks away, 8 blocks away. So.
And to say to them, hey, you have housing, you can go for a semester and get your one, not and they want to live, with somebody, obviously joint and individual contracts, whatever.
So obviously the thing to do is to work it out before any kind of lease is signed so that alternative situations can be addressed, and maybe they can identify somebody who's coming back from a semester abroad that's going to move in if they did spring semester abroad, but that somebody is coming back from fall semester and fill that occupancy. But one of the things, and I'll let Mannix talk about it, that's one of the advantages, I think, of some of the university housing in that they allow shorter term leases rather than the 1 year type of lease. So, and then I'll answer any other.
And then as Mark mentioned, we still allow students, if they were to study abroad, they could get out of their housing. That's one of the reasons they can get out of their housing. So a lot of students who are studying abroad will try to live on campus that semester, like if they're studying abroad in the spring, that fall semester, so they can move out that for the spring, so they won't have anything there.
Yeah, question.
Yep. The questions about I said about 15 to 20% of the current students can return to campus. This year, I anticipate, to be real honest with you, we may actually turn students away. We have not in the past. Students have opted to make their decision because we may not have what they want. Like if they wanted a place at Wilkins and Wilkins was full, then they made that decision to move off campus. But historically, we still have some spots available. I do think that may be different this year. But as Kendra both mentioned, I mean, our market is overbuilt. I talk with landlords all the time. I talked to them this summer where they were still trying to find people to fill their space. So I think if students just can wait, they probably can get a pretty good deal. But we would like the students who want to return. Like I said, early November, we'll have more information out about that.
This is, and then we'll get, this is actually healthy that there's a little, that there's openings for, as Kendra had mentioned before, for a long time. It was difficult, and therefore students were clamoring to sign leases in early October and everything else. This is a healthier environment. I know exactly what you're saying, and I'm not sure what, I'll find out the answer and then we'll put it, I'll get it to Kendra and she'll put it in the newsletter. My understanding is that they could still attempt, I believe, to fill the spot.
Yeah, so they can, yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, question here?
Well, thank you so much for a really nice presentation. You go first. Is it free service or is it complimentary service?
Yeah, it is paid for, it's student service fee funded. So student service fees have already paid for that, and also Boynton Health Service helps pay for it. So yeah, so it's free for them to use, yes. As is the 624 walk is also free. Yep.
Are not employee employees, and I was called my final question, which is, you know, the 20% of recruiting fees, is that recruiting one place? Or university sponsored apartments, and are any of those apartments open today for quick fees, and we're still on here?
All right, well, I'll tackle the first part of the question, which was what percentage of our first year students are not living in a residence hall? And this past year, it was 15% of our first year class was not in a residence hall. Now, traditionally, over many, many years, that number was typically 10 to 11%. But we have noticed an increasing trend of more students choosing to not live, I don't want to say not living, but more students that are, you know, so it's 15%, which, so just to explain those numbers. So it's about 1,500 of our first year class this year are commuters. Of those commuters, half are commuting from home, half are renting in a near neighborhood. So, and that is that's a change for us. In the past, we would have about 800 commuters, not 1,500. And of that, 700 would be commuting from home and 100 would be renting in the neighborhood. So we are seeing a big increase in the numbers of first year students that are choosing to rent your campus. Now, obviously, we still have lots of spaces and we want to fill those spaces in our residence halls. Mannix always claims, and it's true, the research shows students in a residence hall are going to have higher GPAs and higher graduation rates. And I'm trying really hard in our office to provide good resources to change that dynamic. But that is still the reality that we know that students in our residence halls do. They're more successful, more likely to complete their degree programs. But we know a lot of that might be due to financial considerations. And the reason someone's choosing to commute from home is that finances, right? So do you want to handle that second half?
Well, the last one I know you asked about seeing an apartment. Unfortunately, we don't. We are fairly full, and much even though we don't follow landlord tenant laws, we do follow that we would provide our students 24 hours notice before we would show their apartment. So we don't have any whole open apartments because we're full. What was your second question? You had a question before that. Yeah.
And I'm following was this, I'm just curious, that 20% of returning students, that would be one for that includes the apartment.
It would include our apartment. So the 20% includes all the housing we do. But if you go online, you can actually see all of our apartments and you can see virtual tours of all of them. They're all out there. So we put that out there so when students can see that when they go through that. But yeah, it includes all that. Today we house about 7,500 students on campus. And as Kendra said, there's about 1,500 first-year students live off campus, about 5,650 live on campus. So about this year is about 80%, a little less that will live on campus. So it varies from us as it goes. Yeah. I'll tackle the second one first. Any of our students anywhere on campus can have a dining plan. So even if your student lives off campus, they can choose a dining plan. They have more options. They don't have to have a full dining plan. They can have a lesser dining plan, which some of our students would choose to do. And remind me your other question. The selection process. Perfect. I will mention that the housing selection process is much different for a student for their second year. They actually choose where they will go. So they will know right then when they go through their process if they get what they want, which is why I say that sometimes they choose not to stay. Because if they say, hey, I really only want to be in a 2-person apartment in Udall Fall and there's nothing available, then they would know that's not available at that time. So it's a little bit different. First year students we assign, returning students assign themselves.
Find a reason for on-campus housing, how they didn't qualify to be as a resident.
It could, but there's an actual sheet that I have, and I'd be happy to share with students on obtaining Minnesota residency for the purposes of qualifying for in-state tuition. So there are various requirements, but that is one of the things that could improve that likelihood.
Next question.
How likely the return students get their choice for apartment? And second question, what if like there is financial delay that requires them to move on to have a situation? Is that also going to affect their placement on?
It's always hard for me to predict on what a student will get. Much like when your students were assigned initially, it's like that demand. We have 900 apartment spaces, but we may have more students who want those spaces and we have it. So truly, it becomes it's a lottery process when it comes to that thing. So it's depending on what their lottery number and what we have available. So if we have it, we really would like to do that. We try to work with student financial aid to make sure, like this past year, we extended some of our deadlines when their deadlines extended. So a student, if they were to sign up and then they were to cancel later, even after the dates that we had established, because something may happen with their financial aid and they chose to live at home or another location, we were a little bit more generous than we have been in the past to let students do that, because we knew that that was a delay that was out of their control. So I think we still would work with that. They pay really $200 housing guarantee payment. Once they do that, and that comes off of what they pay us, but they can always ask that to be paid in the fall with their financial aid. They just kind of sign an IOU. So we've tried to work with students to make sure that finances is not prohibitive for them to do that.
Yeah, I do want to add that something that I forgot to, I just thought, I'm like, oh, I should have included this in the presentation and I didn't. There is a city policy called inclusionary zoning, where a lot of our newer construction apartments are required to provide some affordable housing spaces to students. And part of the reason that they kind of created this policy is that the regular affordable housing per the federal government guidelines excludes students. Students don't qualify for regular federal affordable housing. And so the city our student government worked with the city and said, we want to change this. How can we make some more affordable options? And so the way the process works right now, we do have properties who offer this. They can note it on their listing with our off-campus listing service, and it's searchable by, basically you can filter, and then for intended audience, they can do income adjusted rental / Pell Grant. And what the city does is that if a student is eligible for a Pell Grant, then they're automatically eligible for the inclusionary zoning policy, like housing that's offered. And so there are a few, there's not a lot right now. There's probably 4 to 5 properties currently, but as new construction keeps getting added, they are required to provide it. So the number of housing providers that will offer this inclusionary zoning opportunity will be increasing as each year passes by. So if you have a student that might qualify, there is that possibility for them to have a discounted rent option at some of these newer apartment complexes. Now I have to share, like the way they these apartments are really expensive. So the discount still, to me, still pretty expensive, right? So you take a place that's $1,200 and now it's $700, right? $800. It's still expensive, but it is reduced from what it would be. I mean, each one, there's different opportunities. They can have fewer units at a higher discount or more units at a lower discount. So each place will be a little bit different on the pricing discount that they can offer, but just want to put that out there. And that is something that One Stop does know some information about, so your student could always chat with them as well. Other questions?
Yeah, the questions about the LLC choice and it's still all the same. For the most part, most of our second year LLCs have had space. Like I said, things could change this year. We have a lot more students. We have about 350 more students we house today than we did last year at this time. So first year students. So that could add different. That's the only thing I would put that only caveat out there. But historically, the LLC, I always tell people that's the secret way of getting time, because the LLCs we prioritize. So if they qualify and are interested in LLC, that's an easier way to go through the process. The question is that they have to have a roommate if they want to be an adult. They do not. It's advantageous sometimes when there's 2 paths. They go through a room sign up, one path if they have a roommate and one if they don't. So we try to separate those out to do that. But if they don't, we know that some students don't have roommates.
Other questions? Great. Well, thank you so much